Hello. This is about why the world is struggling with the religion of Islam and why it's struggling with itself. To the first part, why is the world, almost entire world, is struggling with the religion of Islam? And what I mean about struggling is that it seems to be a challenge to make Islam fit into the modern world and to adapt enough to become part of the rest of the world's civilizations. This can be challenged and opposed, as I will return to, but this is the perception of really many people in the West, in the East, in people who have just a little bit knowledge of Islam or cultures, religions, and societies. Even the Muslims themselves, they ask themselves sometimes this question: why is it difficult for us and our particular religion to fit in like others can do in the modern world and its societies? Now, one basic answer many Muslims give is it's not a challenge at all. The Quran is adaptive and the religion is able to transform part of itself to fit any time at all. But it has its fundaments, and those fundaments are unchangeable. Now, what they mean by unchangeable can differ from one group to another, from one interpretation of the religion to another. So basically, the answer to that question with a keyword is the challenge lies in the Quran, and this is no mystery. It's the book that is the center of focus for the Muslims. Many hates it, and a lot follows it, and some are curious about what it contents, and some read it with curiosity and a kind of perception that makes it well interpreted into different ways than fundamentalists would. That's why we have different schools around the Quran, and we have people who really see the Quran as a hateful, challenging book with a God who is angry and punishing and only giving place to a certain group of people to live and get the paradise, while the others will vanish and get hell in its many shapes and forms that's described in the Quran. So it's like it's a book that divides the waters. This is also a chapter in the Quran itself. It says, I am the divider, and it's like praised be God who sent the divider as a revelation to his servant, in that meaning Muhammad. That means God has had enough. No more of people's own lusts and ideas and meanings. He've sent a book that will be a divider, and nobody will be able to oppose it unless without surrendering to it, or losing themselves or crushing themselves on the way. This is the great belief of the Quran itself and the Muslims that follows it. That's why Islam is a challenging religion, because the content of the Quran is challenging. It has been challenging for Muslim scholars as it has been for European Orientalists and modern scholars who think they have been able to find a way to interpret the Quran with linguistics and postmodern, what can you say, values and ways of looking at text as if that would solve the problem. And some have gone so far as to try and look and find mistakes and wrongs in the Quran, because the Quran itself has challenged humanity, all of it, from the beginning to the end, to come with just one paragraph, one chapter that is wrong or with the mistake, or like it, to write something according to like it. And that's why many people who convert to Islam and succumb and surrender to the content of the Quran has this in mind. This is an unchallenged book and it's unchallengeable. And that's why many of the people who like try to follow the Quran, they have to surrender to everything in it. And there they hit a what can you say, a challenging problem. And that is certain things in the Quran. It's a book with 614 pages, 114 chapters, a lot of words, a lot of ideas, and a lot of stories told and rules. One third of it contains rules and regulations, and there are also some words used in old-fashioned Arabic, or in words known from other languages surrounding the Arabic language. And so you find the Quran challenging, even if you succumb to it, because you find there are schools of thoughts and schools of interpretation on how to understand certain issues, especially the laws and regulations. But one thing stands very steadfast, that is, the Quran says whoever is going to follow me has to like define his life according to what's in me. And that's what's challenging for the Muslims, and why the world seems to have this challenge with Muslims all over the world. And we are in times now where Europe has growing resentment for Muslims, especially religious people who are practicing their religion, but also people who are culturally attached to the Quran, because they are so scared that these people just cannot let go. Why can't you challenge it? Why can't you just criticize it? And why can't you just go about living your life without attaching to it? At the same time, we see people transferring ideas from the Quran into society and real life, or trying to build life according to it. That's what we call political Islam, or Islamism with other word. And in my opinion, it's a huge disaster all over the world. Wherever these Islamists have tried to convert the Quran into real society, things have gone terribly wrong, especially when they have to take decisions on hard issues, like when to fight and when not to, and when to go into politics and when not to, and when to ask people to demonstrate or take action in a very extreme measure. And they can find arguments for that in the Quran, like we saw with the big extreme organization called Al Qaeda, and later on those ISIS people and the Iranians, who took some of the verses in the Quran to measures that gave them an ideology on who's the friend and who's the enemy, and they're ready to fight the whole world for it, and to like make society look exactly as they think the Quran reflects it. Others, they went more moderate and said, well, some things in the Quran were meant for the time of the Prophet, and others were meant as an historic example. We shouldn't transform all that to modern society in its complete detail. It's about finding the main lines in the Quran that says what's good and what's bad, what's right and what's wrong, and try to build up around that, like the big morals, the five big targets and the philosophies in the Quran of protecting the mind, the body, the earnings, and your family and honor, and protecting your life. These are five basic issues that you can see are the targets, or the end meaning of many of the rules of the Quran. And they went the same way, trying to look at the Quran in the way it's interpreted according to like old scholars and newer scholars, according to what can you say, when to fight, when not to fight, and what's the right, what's the wrong, and what about these aggressive sides of the Quran that proclaims people as disbelievers and going to hell, and they should not be forgiven if they are in a war, or have been aggressive to Muslims. Now, that has worked in the Muslim Islamic societies up until the last century, basically. If you look at the history of the Muslims, they have been able to somehow build politics upon the Quran, more or less. And they have been fighting internally too. This is the second part of the question. It's a big, complicated question, but I'm trying to get around it to understand why the world has this challenge with Islam. Basically, the answer is because of the Quran. And so some people go all the way to hate the Quran. They want to burn it. They want to get rid of it. And everybody who carries it, they will be the new fascists and really suppressive forces who thinks they are fighting for something good, but they're actually becoming dark-hearted and hateful, resentful, hating books for their contents. That's not the way you go around making people better people at all. Neither that's the way you understand a text in its full. You have to look at it in the context and to understand its variations and interpretations. And this is what these haters cannot do and don't want to do. They're using it, of course, uh, as an instrument to gain power as well. So that there is a dangerous backside to that type of action. But why are the Muslims quarreling among themselves? If you go back to the early time of Islam, you saw that they were very quickly at the throats of each other after Prophet Muhammad died, and they didn't have the right guidance on who to take the leadership, and so they had to choose, and when they chose, things went wrong. Later on, politics divided them more and more, even in doctrines of how to view the Quran itself, doctrines on how to look at astronomy and other religions, doctrines on how to organize society according to which type of principles and rules. And so you saw a politically motivated use of the Quran among the Muslims themselves. This is what we see today when you look at basically two big major groups, the Sunnites and Shiites, the Gulf countries who are basically Sunnites with small groups of Shiites, and others like the Abadis in Oman, and like the Sufis who live among people in societies trying to awaken the soul to the higher levels of understanding and to get beyond the word of the Quran to the soul of it, and to let people understand that God's deep purpose is to give us love and forgiveness and let us enter the light. And that goes through the Quran according to the Muslim Sufi mystics, but it doesn't stop by the practicing of the word of it. You can become a high trained scholar, but you will not have your heart with you if you do not understand these deeper meanings and adherence to God's way. You have Rumi as a famous person on that road, and you have Sadi Shirazi, you have many others, actually, even Al Ghazali, who seemed as an anti-philosophical orthodox. He was very philosophical, and at the same, but he opposed philosophy in the end of his time, and he, yes, supported the orthodox rulings and way of life that affected the Ayyubi, Salahuddin and others, affected their rule, and later on also became part of the renaissance in the modern time of some of the Muslim Islamic movements. But beyond those, the Sufis and the Abadis and some other small groups, you have the Sunnites and the Shiites who have managed to keep their strength by gaining political power over countries or resources and armies. You have the Turks who have had their own way of looking at Islam through 5 centuries, and they have like also been dominating the picture. And opposing to them came the Salafi movement in the Gulf area and in North Africa, and you have the Mahdi movement in Sudan, who also went in another direction, even though it was also a Sufi movement. So you see, also internally, the Quran has given politicians and politics a way to argue for the truth that they are holding, and so does the others who are opposing them, and so they can from time to time fight or struggle or get in the throat on each other. Maybe they hate each other more than they will hate a real enemy. And so the world is challenged by Islam because the Quran's, what can you say, way of being. I once gave a long lecture, like a study, for a whole evening, 5-6 hours, to a small group of very interested people with influence about the Quran and its main topics and chapters. And one lady who were there, she concluded, she was pretty much critical, and she didn't like really the Quran, and she still doesn't, but she had the respect to look at it and to try to understand. She was surprised that there was so much positive speak about Christianity and the main figures in it in the Quran, like Mary, Virgin Mary, and the Christ as born from only a mother and is given the soul of God, and is a miracle we should follow and believe in. She was surprised by that it wasn't just a narrow-minded attack on these pictures, and that's what happens to some people when they dare open and look into the book. They think it's a kind of confused stories and hate speech and a kind of poems who doesn't make sense, and they get surprised. But she ended up saying it seems that the God of the Quran is a dual personality God who is like in a bit what we describe in modern days as what can you say psychopathic. If you That's her words. I discussed that with her a bit, but she seemed she seemed very convinced that, well, it seems like this is a God who wants to be praised and is very quickly to tell you, I will punish you if you go wrong, and I will only choose a few to be the people who are the right ones, and all happiness to those, while the others they will be. And so you have to strive more and more and succumb more and more. So it's not driven by deep love, it's driven by the fear of getting expelled and the fear of getting punished if you believe in the Quran and its God. And she had a point there we had to discuss. Another guy said that, well, what he could see out of the Quran is that it's a very politically motivating book. If He said if some of the most dangerous elements in the world had this Quran between their hands, they would rule the world with the way it's built up and the way it organizes the thoughts of people and uses it to make people surrender and follow and step into line. So you see, reactions to even people who open the Quran can vary a lot. And others, they say, well, it's amazing how much dialogue you find in the Quran, and it's like it's speaking to you. It's like its verses are trying to engage you by asking questions, by giving rhetoric questions here and there, and by telling small stories, by shifting attention to a cause or a law or a situation it wants to comment on. So this lady had a third understanding altogether. So the big challenge for the world with the Quran is that it has its inherent way of being that makes those who follow it want to prioritize it. It's asking them to prioritize its message and saying, you have to put my law and the law of the God, the Allah, above everything else. You cannot just go around and put the laws as you like them. You cannot allow things that I have forbidden or condemned in the Quran. You have to follow my rulings because this is the guidance that will make you safe, and this is the best one that's according to human nature, and so humans can be in coordinates and balance with themselves and nature. They will be guided and have the light. It's said in many different ways. And so the followers of the Quran who are trying to live up to that, on one hand, they are trying to escape the punishment. They are fearing that God, afraid that, well, if I'm not following, if I'm not trying to practice and build up a society according to that, I will be punished. I will go to hell. I don't want that. Let this God have his word. And he is using me. He's opened my heart to follow, and so I will do that. And this is what many believe. And so they go trying to do that, and they clash with almost anybody in their surroundings, not because they are rude or bad persons, but because they have to live up to that type of rulings. And the Quran does not give much space to critical debate, neither does the Muslim communities as a whole. It has had a few centuries at least where critical debate and even critical questions and discussions are seen as a way of shaking the foundations of the faith and the people who have been possessed by a devil or has to be punished and shut up and so on. So it has also been rigid societies that is not allowing a lot of open-minded discussion, even critical, maybe even evil-minded discussion about the Quran face to face. It's about like taking power and energy and not letting those voices who are not sure or doubtful really speak up. So there is also a way of controlling society like that that is very clear in the culture that came out of the Quran. I'm not saying the Quran is per se only interpreted like that. There have been interpretations in other directions that God even discussed with the devil. He didn't leave the devil and the Shaitan, only to to expel him from paradise, but he let him speak up and oppose, and he even gave him access to the human world. So it became a challenge in a way, or a competition. Why and why not? God says, "This is my wisdom. I'm letting him do it, and he won't be able to take away the people with the good hearts anyway, those who are servants to me." So you see why people clash with societies around them, and why society feel that Muslims are a strange group of people, because they have these practices and they have this rigid way of understanding things. And at the same time, you have Muslims quarreling with each other on how to really understand the Quran and live by it in according to different schools and interpretations. And so that makes it more complicated. Uh, on top of that, I have met and I know about the manipulation, unfortunately, that happens both from those who hates the Quran, trying to show only places that like shows, oh wow, is this book saying that? That's dangerous. That's aggression. That's hate speech, and so on. And others on the other side who are only trying to expose those parts of the same Quran that says very gentle and beautiful and good things and have good commandments to people, who are actually very beautiful things said there. And both are part of the Quran, but the manipulation comes when the Muslims are presenting their religion. They over focus on the religion of peace and goodness, and when people then look at the book or look at the practices, they find them rigid and hard, and maybe opposed to many things that humans want to be part of, like a logical frame of work for society and laws. And there you get the clash over and over again. The Muslims are very convinced that they're gonna win and prevail, and that the world will eventually understand that it cannot go on experimenting with the lives of people, with societies in different ways and manners. It has to go back to the foundations and traditions that really works. A man and a woman and a family, and we shelter them from every danger, and that's why neither men or women are allowed to go places where they can be exposed to affairs and stuff that can destroy that family. So the family becomes very important, and has been important also for the Quran, and the laws that's built around it are very harsh. The same with young people and their way of life. They are not allowed to do anything they want, because they have to be ready for taking over the responsibility of the world, of the family, of the society they're living in, and the Quran want to build them up to be able to do that. And so the Muslims believe all these good values, all these strong values, even the values of fighting, the values of fighting enemies and crushing them. It's because they don't want people to be suppressed and never hear the message of the good book. That's what they say in the political Islam that I have read in details and know a lot about. And it's like they are saying eventually the world will get back to where we are, trying to build up a society according to something given, because we cannot keep on experimenting, going wrong and faltering. And you see same voices going on now in the West, you have it in the East, from non-Muslims saying, hey, where are our values, where are we headed, what kind of society are we building, what's this fragmentation we're in? And it's become globally, even in Muslim countries, and it's going worse some places, where you can see in Muslim societies, people are sick and tired of being in that prison of the traditional Islam and the conservative look, and they want to try, they want to go, they want to see things, they want to have their own opinions. So they are just starting, some of them, where the West is almost ending now. We have had a half century in the West where it should be scientific and people should have their opinion. We should debate the laws. We should find trial and error as a way to correct what laws we have in society and what's necessary and not. What should we forbid and what should we not forbid? And so the Muslims in several societies and countries today are just starting to do that. I don't know if they're going to have a big chance, because the world is shifting, and so will the values. Again, they will shift towards a kind of traditionalism and conservatism, or at least a kind of moderation in experimenting and personal views, that maybe won't give them the big chance to do so, or maybe they will go on trying for 10, 20 years, and when things appears in their results and consequences, they will maybe be shifting back to that. But there is always a struggle, because in every religion there are a group who are very fanatic and very strongly about the values of the religion. You see it in the Jewish, you see it in the Christians, and also in the Muslims. So they will be fighting for the Quran and for its values, correcting and trying to take people back to those counts of values. So it's in the Quran's DNA that it wants to struggle with the world and with people in it. I know this sounds extreme and harsh and maybe unfair to many Muslims who just want to fit in and want to try to, oh no, man, I don't read the Quran like that. I don't live like that. That's extreme views. That's political Islam. We don't do that. And that's exactly the point I'm trying to give here. Many Muslims, they detach themselves from that exact view. We don't want to be struggling the whole world. We don't want to forbid everything, because our cultural values have extended to almost forbidding everything in the modern culture that has something to do with destruction of the family, or deluding the individual from his or her responsibility, or challenging the morals and beliefs of the people. So many Muslims are trying to see what can they do by detaching themselves from several points, saying this is culture, this is a scholar interpretation, we don't have to follow it, and things in the Quran are not necessarily read as people want them to be read, or as those old scholars thought they should be. So there have been some modern interpretations of the Quran, but basically it hasn't moved a lot. I know people seem to be hopeful and wanting, oh yeah, Islam is finally shifting towards modernism and secularism. No, there are people detaching themselves from that closed view, and they do it in secret, or maybe in societies where they're able to, even in universities where they can moderate enough. But basically, you find the Orthodox Islam and the conservative Islam very strong and really rooted in the big societies like Egypt, Saudi Arabia, Pakistan, West India. What can we say more? In North Africa, Algeria and Morocco. When you go to those countries, people from the West have been going to Morocco the last decades. They see it's an open, tolerant society that seems secular, and you do not really feel that aggression or that problematic conflict between Islam and the modern life. It's because the Moroccans are also like educated to be more spiritual, and to follow the teachings of the Quran as an individual path to God, not as something they should by force use against their families or people who are visiting them or something like that. That's not always been the case with the Moroccans, because they have been the Moros. That's the word, Saracens and Moros. It came from the Moroccan Murabitun, Muahidun. They didn't know how to spell these words, so they became the Moros, and the Muslim groups who came to Europe. So they've also been carrying these very orthodox and strong conservative values for a few centuries earlier, and it can shift again depending on world politics and the effect of the culture around them. I've also read about several societies, both within Muslims and outside them, secret societies or closed societies, who have really taken up the challenge, saying if we cannot do something about how this Quran is read, we will eventually be facing a very dangerous type of people and enemies. It's like they will be fanatically induced with these meanings, and they were going to fight the world to death, and they have won before. They can maybe win again, and the world would lose part of its structure and culture and the way it is. We saw that in Afghanistan, in Taliban, before they became politicians. They had this movement that want to crush down every site that was anti-Muslim, and they wanted to enforce some laws that even the other Muslims in their own society reading the same Quran thought was too extreme. So you see, The challenges seems never ending. Well, what's the solution? There is no real solution. The solution depends on the individual and how they approach God's words in the Quran and approach the words that's written there. And how they try to understand that it's a test. It's about finding your way to God and not imposing the truth on everybody else. And that's following in the footsteps of both the Prophet and the early communities who did not take up the fight and who did not impose on others to convert by force. It should come from the heart. And the solution is also, if those who are opposing Islam and the Quran and trying to find the mistakes in it, they have been trying now for a long time, I think few centuries, and they have been always finding answers among the scholars of the Arabic language, even Christian Arabic scholars. I've read and heard some of them. They have said, well, we can't find any grammatical mistakes. It's a pure, perfect book that's also a foundation for Arabic grammar. So you can't come after that. And some of them thought they found something at one point 100 years ago. There was this scholar called Goldschmidt or something like that. I forgot his name. He was a big Orientalist who really looked for these mistakes grammatically. But then the Arabic scholars found that, well, we couldn't really prove that it was a mistake. It's another way of putting the sentence, and where you think you get the illusion that there is a mistake here, but it's a perfectly correct Arabic sentence. And then those who are trying to pull down the challenge of the Quran, they have not only to find a mistake, they have to prove they can come with something similar. That's the big challenge. If you can do that at one point, you will be able to tear down the authority of the Quran from within. And so if there's somebody sitting out there trying to sit in cultural centers or language centers and try to write down chapters like the Quran said, come, I challenge you to bring just one chapter in the same building and content and strength and integrity of the words and ideas that I have inside me. And it says they won't do, and they can't do, and they won't do. And so he says, if they can't do and they won't do, then it's the best to surrender your face to God who has revealed this. So you see, it's not easy, because there is an appeal to the logic, to the understanding. One answer I gave once in one of my books called the audacity to doubt, is that, and I speak always very respectfully, and I cannot deny anything about the strength of the Quran and God's voice and spirit in it. This is stupidity and blindness and hatred to say that it's all a kind of a book of magic or a crazy rabblings or whatever people are saying. Then they haven't read. And people with understanding and cultivation, when they read, at least they gain respect. I know a scholar from a university in Europe who has studied the Quran and Arabic language, and he has nothing but an understanding and respect for why the Muslims adhere to the Quran. He's not a Muslim himself, but he has this great respect for the way it gives its messages, its strength, its integrity. He believes it's parts that's taken from the old Jewish stories about Moses and so on, and part of it from the Christians. And so it's like he believes Muhammad built the Quran as a religion inspired by Jewish and Christians. And so that's the limit of his, perception and understanding. While the Muslims would oppose that, you have many people outside Islam who believe in that version, that it is a beautiful book. Muhammad was a great scholar, a good man who was very profound in Arabic and could miraculously bring this book to life as a one-time book and story. And so he understands why millions have followed it and still follows it. But he challenges the content of it and the interpretations of it in his own way, while giving his seminars and lectures. And he has also Muslim students, even religious Muslim students in those arenas. So the challenge of the Quran is the challenge of Islam when it comes to why it doesn't really fit in other societies, and why it always will be that challenge. It's like the Christians in another way, who are fundamentalists, conservative, or maybe not really giving up the what can you say, the truth in the testaments, in the evangelical text, even in the old Bible. Some of them say this is the truth and we will stick to it, and we do not care in which direction the world goes. And there have been small communities who grew in the late times, now also growing more and more. People are going to what you call free churches and alternative churches and communities, because they do not like that very shallow and unbiblical interpretation of God's word, making it just a story about a man who gave his life for people to be salvaged. They see it as a way of life, values, a way of also connecting and what can you say, making social rules and laws. So it's actually the same problem, but the focus on Islam is because I believe Muslims are very loud and fairly uneducated. We must remember that for 100 years or more, maybe more actually, 150 years, the decline in the education among Muslims has been big and huge, especially from, if you look at the Muslim countries who gained their independence between World War II and now. You see that it was illiterate people, or people with very little education, not so many universities. All they had to learn was in small schools, and to a very, very certain limit. The rest is education they had to seek in the West. And so when people went to the West to become doctors, or to China, and some went to India, who also had a big center of culture and education. So you see, the Muslim world didn't have these things for many years, and so they seem to be very rude, very hard, very narrow-minded, having the Quran in hands, shouting, burning things, and the media has focused also a lot on it for a half a decade, to show the barbarism of those Muslims. And so combined with that, you get a picture that, well, these people are out of time, out of order. But they have regained, many Muslims have tried to regain and refresh both their understanding, their approach, individually and in groups. You have also many Muslim groups who oppose other Muslim groups who are too extreme, or trying to use the Quran for political motivated issues. So you see, it's an ongoing struggle. You can say it's like Christianity, okay. It's also like what's going on among the Jews when they can't agree on the interpretations and the comments of the Holy Bible. Well, it's actually the same, but much stronger, because the focus on the Muslims have been stronger, because they are a lot different, and they try to adhere to the laws because they're afraid of losing their lives to hell. While a Christian would say, okay, maybe I can adapt a bit, and Christ has taken my sins, and God is a forgiving God. And the Jews, they say, well, we are not practicing, we are secular Jews, or we are practicing, but we only need to do it in our communities. You have the Muslims saying the Quran asks us to carry the life of the Quran wherever we go, however we go, and wherever we stay. So that brings a challenge to life that's not easy to overcome. And we have been at points in Europe where riots from Muslims against their enemies and foes, and what can you say, people they don't like, has grown so high that, they torched cars and they burned and they killed people on the streets. And the reaction to that from what people can call fascist or very extreme right-wing people has also been accordingly very difficult to cope with. So some believe that the next battle in Europe will be between Islam and the rest, like it could be Christians and some other groups of people who are sick and tired of the influence of the Quran and the Muslims. And we have seen those very strong reactions, starting dating back to the cartoon crisis that started, what can you say, by coincidence in Denmark. But you had incidents in Holland, you had it in Belgium with the media, you had a lot of trouble and conflicts in France, in Sweden. So things, I know politicians in Europe are aware of the challenges, and also the security agencies and the people who are like looking into the structure of society in the future. They know the presence of so many Muslims and their attachment in one way or another to the Quran is gonna be a big structural and strategical challenge for Christian Europe, for also secular Europe. But until now, they believe they can solve the problems, and this is a gold point I'm reaching to here. I don't know, nobody is listening. Just putting it out there. Maybe one day somebody will be listening when they find it, and they find these things. A golden point here is the European lawmakers and security leaders and people who are concerned with how Europe is developing, they see Muslims in great numbers as a workforce who are still a positive addition to the society, even and with all these troubles that's going on. Why are they looking at it like that? It's because they can see that many Muslims are not really fanatically Islamists or extremists, or really living by the book, as you say in English, living by the book. That's a good phrase. They are not really going step by step in everything. They're also making their own choices, own interpretations. They are going to find their own lifestyle within Islam to keep the culture, or not to be harassed, or to get the salvation of God. And Europe has no problem with that. America and United States has no problem with that. Maybe China has, because it's a one-party rule that's atheist and is afraid of any religion who grows beyond a certain limit. Maybe that would be a challenge in a dictatorship somewhere that hates that religion, or a fascist state. But Europe as a whole, and America, United States, South America, they don't see that as a challenge. You can go and believe in any salvation you like, as long as you're participating to society and not really bringing a conflict into it. Even if you're wearing a scarf, or you have Muslim kids who are praying according to the Muslim belief, it's not the problem. If you otherwise go and work and participate and becoming part of society. So they believe still in integration. This view is challenged by those who believe in assimilation, also among people with Muslim background or old Muslim background, who believe that there is no way around assimilation to get rid of the problem of Islam. This is a strong view held by also intellectuals and cultivated people. It's not only people on the street. But until now, the main view is that the salad bowl is possible. You know, that you can have a salad with a lot of things in it, and it will taste good, and it will all participate to the dish you're eating in a way. So the salad bowl of Europe with different cultures, as long as they all go and become part of the workforce, war force, police force, security force, helping society, what's the problem in that? You can go home, or after work go to your church, or you can go to your mosque and ask the God for salvation as much as you want. Just don't challenge the basic secular notion of society. Now, as long as Europe and America believes this is possible, and they can see, well, there are signs that this is gonna work. Muslims are changing. The second generation is not the first one. The third generation has lost its roots and language, and they want to just be part of society. The wars waging in the Middle East and Africa shows them that this is the best place to be, and they should also be concerned to keep it that way and give it their loyalty. So many Muslims are preaching loyalty to Europe as well, and saying we do not agree with these groups, and we hope the police will surround them and throw them out, or that they do not affect the life of the rest of us. Still, they want to have this attachment to the Quran, to the readings, to the text, and live according to it. They do not agree on everything, people are doing or living in Europe. And that can be a challenge for some Europeans. Well, you're segregating yourself. This happened to the Jews in their history, also in Europe, where they segregated themselves too much. Not all of them, but those who did. They became a thorn in the eye of the major culture. Well, you're not eating pork, you're not participating in the swimming hall, you're not going with us to the trip, and you're not dancing on the floor, you're not getting a European non-Jewish girlfriend or non-Muslim girlfriend. It becomes a conflict that's under the surface. But as long as the European lawmakers and those who are keeping an eye on the challenges, they believe there is a solution in Muslims changing, and they believe it's happening, and they are integrating them, like in Rome, that integrated different cultures and actually used them as soldiers, as workers, as a force for its own good. Then it's a strength. And then we have to deal with the small, minor, or bigger problems, somebody shooting here and there, somebody doing something wrong, or participating in some extreme actions. We just have to crack down on those, like we do with criminals and smugglers and other mafias and other type of wrongdoers. That's not good for society. We shouldn't exaggerate the problem. And this view has made the Muslims more sure and more easy that we are not. I think the last 5-10 years, this has shown the road. We are not a major security threat. And also thanks to themselves, they have been working on showing another face, and they got help from the Gulf countries, they got help from even Western parts, Western activists, to show that, well, there's another face to these Muslims and to their interpretations of the Quran. They can be just as good Europeans as anybody else. Maybe they're even better than my very fundamentalist Christian neighbor, they would say, or better than the very extreme Jew who shut himself up in a synagogue and do not want to do anything on a Sabbath and so on, or maybe even better than the Hindus who has this and that, or at least the same. If the Hindus can work, these can work too, and they can go home and practice whatever religion they want. Now, this is challenged from the Muslims within, because the preachers among the Muslims, those who are giving the message of the right path and Islam, the people who are missionaries, they are trying to convince more and more Muslims, whether it's in Europe or in any country, but now I am focusing on Europe and America, South America, and these places where Muslims are new and a big challenge and different in many ways. They're trying to convince Muslims, these missionaries. Some of them are born in Europe, some of them are converts. They are very conservative in their views and say, hey, you are not living according to the Quran, stop that, don't participate in it. If you really want the salvation of God, you have to do this and that, this and that. And so the membership will grow, has grown also among the young people. And that again became a concern for Europe, and is still today, and has also brought stronger reactions on the other side among Christians and among nationalists and right-wing people, but also slowly and gradually among leftists, who start seeing that our alliance with these Muslims and Islamists is not going to hold. Maybe now because we want to oppose the right wing and we want to get influence in politics. They have their own agenda, the left, using and being in bed with the Islamists. But don't mistake it, they don't like each other much, but they don't share much. A group of hippies smoking pot and having sex on the beaches naked has not much to do with these Muslim conservative women who are beating the kid not to go to a place where it's forbidden to go, and so on. So you see, it's just an alliance that will fade, and what will happen, I don't know. Nobody knows really, but there are signs that some Muslims will just like change. They will assimilate. They are already assimilated, and they say, hey, we would not go that way. And what I have like tried to say to those who are conservative and those who are holding on, say, the first chance you find to go back to a place that resembles you more, you should do it. If you believe what others are doing is not right, or they're losing their soul to the European way of life, you should go. No, they want to challenge it. They want to stay and challenge it. and show them that they are doing wrong. They also want to convert the Europeans and have had success with it in different places. There are also many converts in United States and Britain and so on, both among African Americans and uh, simultaneously with that, the Christian missionaries are working as well among Muslims who are being shocked by Islam, who have been suppressed, who have had trouble with hypocrisy, with the way they're living, and showing them another way that they can find salvation through Christ and God's love, and not the fear and not the hypocrisy and the double-faced agendas that some of these people carrying the Islam and Quran really has. And I tell you, there are these people, and they are really using the power of religion, and they have a double face, and they can do things that's not good, and at least suppress people and their opinions and mind. So it's happening, and so that's why a lot of people who do not like that, they go away from it in silence, or they convert away from it. At the same time, we see conversion from Europeans who get tired of their society, and families feel suppressed, outsiders not welcome, and cannot identify themselves with their old religion or their old way of life. They go over to Islam. I've known a big group of these people, and I have read a report on the numbers that has been what can you say, shifting religion, proselytes and converts. And so there are things shifting all the time. This is what culture is, and religious borders. It's not just it's not static at all. So when you ask why Islam is a challenge, this is part of a major answer, that the Quran itself gives the Muslims that motivation and that frame to be that challenge and to stay on it and to keep it up. And that will inevitably lead to a conflict in Europe. It can lead to a civil war even. It can lead to, because many Muslims now have become Europeans or second, third generation. They know the language, the culture, they're even working, they maybe have positions even in the police and the security forces and so on, and the army. And if that keeps going on and growing, and the problem of identifying with Europe and giving your loyalty to the society structure is not solved, it's difficult to solve, it's not easy. One of two things could happen, we know from history. One is that Europe reacts so strongly that they go to a popular, hateful, resentful leader, give him the power, or her, give them the power to do something about this problem. So they go and shift from that tolerance, understanding, humanism, to a leader that is a necessary evil to get rid of that big challenge that's growing. I know many Europeans have this notion, and they want to promote it, and they think they are waiting for the right leader to take that role and be able to push through with it. There are some leaders, but they have always been sabotaged. Don't ask me how I know. They have always been sabotaged from inside the European Union and the European countries, also in Scandinavia, because the major force of the Europeans and the force of the very clever intellectual elite, part of them are Jewish and Muslims, and they get money from the Gulf, and they get support from many places. They keep a very watchful eye on the right, as they keep an eye on the extreme left and the Muslim extremists, because they believe that this extreme right is trying to use the case of the Muslims, because they are so visible, the case of the challenge with the Muslims, the fear, the scareness, the resentment, to take over power and to shift societies into fascism or suppression or anti-democratic ideals. And that scares the Europeans, very understandable. Well, so they get sabotaged. And that's why the problem of the Muslim challenge, as they call it, doesn't get solved. It just gets pushed on from decade to decade without solving. I have thought these things through, and I have found a way of solving it, but unfortunately, nobody listened to me at that time. Nobody's listening to me now at all. I'm speaking to myself and to the walls in this video. That's how life is. But I found the right way of solving the problem without making the right grow as a monster, and without leaving the Muslims as a proletarian um, suppressed group. But you have to do some insurgents, and you have to do some strong moves that are strategically possible. But it needs a brilliant mind, and it needs, like, you need to get, green light. You need to get, what can you say, um, power given to you in a certain way. It's not a dictatorial power to lead the whole society and country, but you need the opening to be able to go and do these insurgents, and make the change before things grow out of hand. So the one way this could go is a right-wing reaction. The second way it could go is a kind of outside forces of Europe will use the powers of the Muslims to create a civil war like society, and the Muslims will claim at one point that societies should shift to uh, to their understanding and their values and their beliefs, and there will come a big clash supported by outside countries. Could be Turkey, could be Pakistan, could be North African, Gulf countries, people with money and ability. When the time is right, they will try and push to a new limit, like the old invasion of Europe that went all the way up to Vienna and to part of Central and West, what you say, Europe. The same could happen, but from the inside, later, if things change in the world. But as for now, I understand um, that much, that it's not the biggest challenge right now. There are bigger challenges in Europe than to get rid of that workforce that's actually doing a good job in hospitals and cleaning and airports and many other places. And so be it. The different belief, different system. The great challenge hasn't arrived yet. I hope I answered basically the two questions in a like logical and accepted way.